What's going on, everybody? It's Ron Brown, LMT, the People's Fitness Professional, and you are now rocking with a New Yorker's Perspective, NYP Talk Show, Friday Night Lions Den. And I have my brother, co-host Mikey Fever with us, and Sunez Allah to talk about the 5% Nation, and that's what's going on tonight. Lions Den. Let's get ready to rock and roll. Welcome,
Peace.
Sunez. Welcome, Sunez. Peace to you, brother.
Peace, peace,
Peace, God.
How,
peace.
how you be, God?
I'm very good, very good. You know what I mean?
All right, all right. So, oh, you ready to get straight to business?
Yeah. He's ready.
He's ready. All right. So I'd like to discuss Allah's teachings off the bat, right? So if I'm a newborn, right? First of all, what is a newborn? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, newborn is someone that's learning the knowledge of self and is new to it. Is just learning, doesn't know anything, and he just hears gods and everything, and he's checking it out. He may even not be fully committed though. Like the way I teach, though, I don't consider anyone fully committed until they really show certain things. But a newborn is someone that is certainly usually someone that has said, "Listen, I see myself as God. I don't see that there is a mystery God, but I also see that I am the God, and I don't know exactly why, and I need to learn the teachings why." And that would be a newborn. And he's, oftentimes he's selected who's going to teach him, what we call an enlightener or an educator. And, and he's rolling with that person, to learn, so that's a newborn, and these teachings, though, we say, what are Allah's teachings, though, as the 5% Nation of God's nerds? It's real simple. There is no mystery God. There is no mysterious being, energy, or force that causes our reality. And so we look within ourselves for that reality. And we have teachings that have a history that they went through the Nation of Islam as what they called the supreme wisdom. But there was one man that was in the Nation of Islam that saw himself actualized in the teachings. That means that the teaching said, as an example, one of them says, who is the original man? The original man is the Asiatic black man, the maker, the owner, the cream of the planet Earth, father of civilization, and God of the universe. And he saw himself as that right now. He said, I'm a black man. And it says that the black man is the original man. And it says that the original man is God. So that means I must be that right now. And in the Nation of Islam, they are taught that they are Muslims who submit to the will of Allah, who came in the person of who submit to the will of Allah, who came in the person of Master Fard Muhammad. And he didn't see that. He saw that it is the black man right now, each and every black man with the knowledge of himself, and saw that now. And so his major step forward was that he actualized what was written on there. So they agreed with what was written on there, but he actualized it. He said, that's me. And eventually he felt that was too much of a discrepancy in that. And he left in 1963. By 1964, he started to already teach the youth. And that's when we say our nation started. So this is the big difference. Now, what makes these teachings so powerful is twofold things. If we look at it immediately, it's the fact that he was teaching the youth immediately that they are the true and living gods, that they are the true and living earths, if they're a man or woman. And that's something that with teachings of this high level, they were never taught, and they were never focused on children, on the young. They mainly were focused on adults that rehabilitated themselves. Or in many ancient times that saw that man was God. This was a teaching that they gave out after years and years of study. This wasn't something that was just given to the youth. When Allah left the temple, saw himself as Allah, right? He was known as Clarence 13X, and he left the Nation of Islam. He said, I'm Allah himself, but he started to teach the youth that they're the true and living gods as well, and that's when our nation started. And the value in that becomes twofold, that second thing, because he devised a supreme mathematics and supreme alphabet that made these teachings so simple that we're able to analyze the complex with just these simple meanings for each numeral that we have, for 1 through 9 and 0. and understand the nature of creation, its law and order, but also know the nature of ourselves as creators and how we move and how we devise things. And as we analyze things with the supreme mathematics, we then reach a point where we start to use the supreme mathematics to then shape our world. You know what I mean? So that would be like where the newborn would be. They would be trying to analyze the world that they have lived, that they have seen through supreme mathematics. One is knowledge, two is wisdom, three is understanding. So I said, wait a minute. When I was in this past situation that went badly for me, the newborn, I realized that I didn't really have much knowledge, and I made decisions that were not based on good experience, a bad use of the knowledge, wisdom, right? That would be the wisdom fail. And so I left and I led with an misunderstanding. So now he looks back on past and he sees how he may have failed. He looks back on the past and sees, wow, that was very successful. In this case, I had not much knowledge, but it was actual true knowledge. It was actually proven true. And I used it very well. I wisdomed it very well. So my understanding, the way that I came to its purpose, the revelation of its purpose was so profound that I was able to have a great culture with it, for culture. And what I did with it, what I expressed with it outward to the world was very, very powerful, right? Culture, power. And it led to an equality. I saw things of a greater nature, and it fulfilled me in a greater way of seeing myself, God, right? And I was able to change my reality, build or destroy. And I fulfilled something grand. You see, born, 9. So now the student, the newborn, goes through things like this with supreme mathematics, looking at his life, looking at what he could do. And eventually they would reach the point where they would memorize it, memorize the alphabet, memorize the 120 lessons, and learn vital history that isn't taught, still isn't taught. And he and she would be able to see things more profoundly, and what we call it, write our history in advance, and basically see the things that must be done, and now I have the power to make them done. So it's almost like they're already written. So this is, if I had to say in a brief way, right? This is the strength of these teachings, and we're able to teach all of humanity because wherever humanity has been, at whatever stage in life, in history, in any moment, no one has ever been able to prove to us that a mysterious being, energy, or force out there, outside of ourselves, has been a conduit to help us. You see? So everywhere, even if they don't accept the teachings, we're still able to teach people to be civilized and use their own thought processes to further their reality. And it's profound. It's profound.
Indeed, God. And
Yes.
for the viewers may not know that you were basically quoting the mathematics.
Right. I
Yeah.
basically was using the supreme mathematics in that sequence there.
Right. And I would add to it that the supreme mathematics, the lessons actually help you become a good orator, right? So you can teach other people, right? And have a captivating way of expressing yourself and teaching.
I think so. It's almost like you can never really trace what part of it makes the person greater. It's all of the sum of all these things, because the person learns to have more control of their life. They often become a better orator because they learn to articulate, put into words what it is that they intend to do, and also how they intend things to be. So they have like judgments and proper values of judgment of what they see is profound, what they see is worked, what they see is not good. And as you see students grow, you see them be able to put into words things that they always wanted, and what they needed. And they didn't do that before, And by default, it does make them greater orators,
Mm-hmm.
It leads them to express themselves in more profound ways.
Mm-hmm.
It leads them to appreciate the value of the word, not just to meaninglessly say things, I just cursed out, but I didn't mean that. You know what I'm saying? it leads them to say things, even if they have emotions, to say, listen, what is the most meaningful thing that I could say here? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And we have a tendency, the great student, those great 5%ers throughout history, they always were able to say exactly what they mean. And even when they said things with high emotion and high verve, anger, intensity, it was always calculated. It always calculated to share what they meant, what they truly meant, you know. And so I certainly would agree, absolutely, you know.
Indeed, God.
Yeah.
Now, if we go through the now, first off, I just want to make a note that the God just said there is no mystery God. There's no mystery thing out there, being out there, controlling our own reality. I just want to bring that home and make sure that it's
Right.
understood, because people come in the name and they start talking about mystery gods, and they don't necessarily go, oh yeah, God out there, but they kind of say it in a roundabout way where you got to kind of like read it. You got like, what did this person, did it make any sense? Like,
Yeah. There are some people that have this knowledge that they don't see themselves having that control in their life, you know? And so they do attribute things outside of themselves, and they do see themselves as doing the best that they can, you know? And they speak mysteriously, you know? And I disagree with it, you know, vehemently, you know? And because if we teach this, we show and prove this, and then if we fail, which many of us fail in many things, we fail in many things all the time. That's the whole point of this, though. You know, one thing, there's a phrase I always teach, though, and I always say that we are creators in our own creation. That means that we're creating everything. So we are experimenting with the most highest explosive creation itself, what we create. You know what I mean? So I think what people don't get, even when they have this knowledge, is that we're supposed to be failing. We're supposed to be exploding some things. We're supposed to be doing things. We are creating this as we live, just like we create ourselves with everything. Like every time we eat something, we're thinking like, how is this going to help me? You know, hopefully we would, right? How is this going to help me? How is this going to better me, right? All these things. So everything is a choice of how we create ourselves. You know, what books do I read? You know, what show do I watch? Everything will create us in some kind of way. And I think that for those of us that are 5%ers that really understand this, that's the value that we put on things, you know. And it's so simple, yet I don't get too mad about it when people don't get it, because it's also profound teaching. You know what I'm saying?
true indeed, God. My issue with it is that they confuse people, especially when they have some kind of notoriety.
Yeah.
They confuse people. So people look at it and they say, oh, the 5%ers, and then they start talking about some mystery God low key. And then people may come to the 5% nation looking for a mixed, diluted, and tampered with version of what it is,
Right.
and it's not right and exact.
And this happens often. This happens often. In you know, we're saying off air. I've been teaching at the law school since 2000. You know, over 23 years. So people are so inspired by songs they hear. You know, and I can't say that's bad, because you know that's my life. I'm a music journalist and historian. You know, so I love it. I don't get mad about it. But musicians say things wrong. You know, and unlike unlike other professions that have evolved where you could fix things, like I'm a journalist, and now, unlike it was when I started, if I write an error in an article, I could go fix it. You know what I'm saying? Even my books I published, I could reprint them immediately. You know, I could fix things immediately. But you know, when you make a song, it's out there already. It's too late. You know what I'm saying? You can't really fix it. And if it becomes a song that people like, you know, they're quoting that wrong information again and again, and he said it's so cool, and that's the way it is. You know what I mean?
Indeed.
So there's always a lot of things to encounter and stuff. And most of the people that are I'm gonna say this though, brothers that I know personally in music that are in this nation or deal with it, many of them aren't really well taught. And some of it isn't because they chose badly and stuff. It's just that they're not around as vigorously. You know what I'm saying? They haven't focused on it enough. You know what I mean? They haven't been under the study. And a lot of the musicians that we love today, like they weren't really under the study. They weren't waking up every day going to see their enlightener, going to see him. And you can't be on this block if you don't know the math. You know what I mean? Like that wasn't their life, that wasn't their life. So they have a different perspective, you know what I mean? Because a lot of them come back saying like, I should have learned it better. I could learn it better. You know what I'm saying? Indeed. So I don't always fault the artist and all that, even though I do sometimes with certain things,
I was going to allude to that as well. I was going to say it's up to the educator and the student's interpretation on how well they are picking up the lessons.
Sure. Yeah, we would hope that once they get to the school, though, that we could correct those errors. We correct those errors. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Indeed. Now I want to go over. Now, I've asked this question on another podcast, in another school of thought, another nation. What did their, I would say, leader taught them? Teach. So I'm going to ask you, from what you know, what did Allah teach?
Yeah. Well, obviously, the first precursor to that, though, was that, we don't really have leaders like that. You know what I'm saying? And when the father taught, he didn't want to be a leader. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. He was being a father to them. He was guiding them because they were young. They were young teenagers. You know what I mean? And it wasn't like he got the good teens. Like he didn't go, "What's your GPA? What college you go to?" He didn't stop off at City College and pick the best ones. Mm-hmm. He was looking and finding youth that were in the street, and he didn't pulpit, meaning that he didn't get on a pulpit and say, "Listen, I got these teachings and stuff like that." So there are many things he did that weren't like many of the leaders of the time that was back then, right? So this led to students that he was basically having a very personal rapport with, and he ended up being a father figure to them. So like when people say like Allah the Father, understand like for those that were with him in the beginning, he was a father figure for sure, a great role model. Mm-hmm. And he was like them, so I think as far as like what he taught, I think I can't compare it to other schools of thought and stuff like that in one certain sense, but I could say that even though there are people that complain, like he said this, he said that, what he said to many of the elders was transmitted very, very, very good. People complain about it a lot, but what we're seeing is people that were taught, let's say in Brooklyn, Medina, they were taught different things by him. People in Mecca, they were taught different things by him. But if you really look at it on like, what were you told by him? What were you told by him? It's actually very consistent for the pockets and ciphers that he was in, Mm-hmm. And that tells me that what he was teaching them was very well transmitted, and there were a lot of things he said, but I think that some of them were the focus on the children. The babies are the best part. The way that we teach this has to be as simple as possible because we are teaching people that don't know this and don't understand this and may never understand this. So I think sometimes what we forget is that he was also teaching us how to teach people that will not be in the nation. You see, he was teaching us to be responsible like actual God is. Responsible for the entire universe, that we're responsible for everything that is going on, and whatever we could do to make it better, we make it better. So we're not responsible just for the students that say, "I'm going to be the God," and say, "I'm going to mess with him," though, because I like that, but also teaching civilization, righteousness to all of those other people. In other words, what civilization, what is this world really is, the type of oppression that we are really facing that is deeper than just what you see. And then righteousness, though, they may not want to be part of this nation, but they may accept that, I got to do more for myself. And so they learn how to eat, they'll learn how to be civilized and all these kind of things. Mm-hmm. And that's our responsibility. That's what he taught us, to have that kind of responsibility,
Indeed. Indeed. All right. So, in regards to the lessons, now, I just want to clarify for those who don't know, the supreme mathematics and the supreme alphabets isn't a part of 120.
That's right. That's right. And they're not from the Nation of Islam. There are parts of 120 that Allah changed, like pronouns and stuff. Specifically, pronouns is a good example. Like, because we're the gods. Like, we're not. It's not talking about somebody else. It's us. But he's saying select pronouns, certain words. But the supreme mathematics and alphabet is something that he created. You know. Yeah.
Right. So I corrected a brother on our last podcast. I think I forgot exactly what he said, and I was like, no, that's not that's not what happened.
Right. Right.
Brother Mike, I don't know if you remember. I think he said, brother Clip said, Allah created the 5% nation from the Nation of Islam.
Oh
Some,
yeah,
something to that effect.
that story always get conflated. A lot of people conflate that story because they always assume that he
Yeah.
left. It
Yeah. That's a simple sociological answer. Like that's what you read in sociology books. And there are many histories, short and longer, and papers that people write that are not in this nation at all, that they write for school all the time. You know, because I get notices and stuff about them when they mention my name. And they write about this stuff, but it's funny that when you go to school and they tell you how to write papers and stuff, they say the value of the paper is based on secondhand or firsthand research, and they easily could do firsthand research. We're all here, you know what I mean? And they do no firsthand research though, and they get allowed to write whole thesis papers about the 5% nation of gods and earths without even contacting us, and they'll do more legwork to talk to a rapper about it that is a much harder catch, you know what I mean, than to talk to somebody that's actually at the school or something like that and doing it daily. And that's where you get misnomers like that, because the simple sociological approach of history is that it goes for branches, like this goes here, this goes there, and they just follow that line. So it's an easy line to just do a tree branch and say Nation of Islam, and then it has a branch of what Elijah's son did. This is what Allah did, you know what I mean? And just do branches, basic branches like that. And it doesn't get the impact of the fact that what we did though changes the whole thing. It changes the entire whole thing by actualizing that first teaching, who is the original man, and saying that it's us. We change it to an entire different school of thought, and we could go to Harlem now. We go to Mecca, and you'll see Muslims, in the Nation of Islam, and they'll say peace, and they'll talk about the mathematics and stuff, and they'll mix and blend because they're selling their bean pies and they're selling their final clothes by any means necessary. You know what I mean? But that's not their teaching. And when you talk to people in Nation of Islam, they don't see it the way we do it. They don't see it. They don't see that. They see it that, eventually we'll be gods, I guess. We're gods among men. Like it's always some type of little g God in a different context of using the word God. And it's always about Fard coming back. It's always about something Fard like coming back, a prophecy or something, and that's not what we teach,
Indeed.
One of the main things that Allah intended to do was to actualize it so intensely among the youth that they don't spend their time about prophecy, that they spend their time scientifically trying to prove that they are God. So like, we don't say that we're God and that's end of discussion. We're not doing any more research. It's end of discussion. In fact, it's the opposite. We say that we're true and living God. So every single day, we're supposed to be looking for some new science and be daring enough to test ourselves to see if we're wrong and to find out if we still are correct in new ways. by being challenging to ourselves, by looking through sciences, by studying them, and by being rigorous with that. That's what Allah wanted our nation to be, not to just be, well, we're the gods of this time, so we're going to dominate now until something else comes. That's not what he taught us, you know? And other schools of thought are still in that level, you know? And I'm not saying their level's lower. I don't care about no damn levels, you know? All I know is that every other religious school of thought, including the Nation of Islam, there is this invisible barrier. There is an invisible glass ceiling that there is a question that is okay that they do not answer because he will answer it. Fard will answer it. God will answer it. You know, someone else is going to answer it. So there's always a glass ceiling. When we build, we have no glass ceiling. We attributed the things that we can't answer to our own devices, you know, our own limitations at that moment. And that's why when we look up, we don't look up, we look beyond. So when the father couldn't answer certain things, and I learned this from Firstborn Prince, right? The firstborn being those first 9 that he taught exclusively and asked them to share those teachings, even though he taught others and brought others, you know. Firstborn Prince used to tell me that when there was something that couldn't be answered, don't worry about it. The babies will get it, you know? And that's why I used to say, if you yelled out Allahu Akbar, he would say, no, the babies are the greatest. And that's where that big saying comes from that we always say. Mm-hmm. So if we can't do it, we'll continue to formulate the questions. It's like our life is like a spirituality of scholarship, really, in a lot of ways. You know, one of my favorite scholars is Ivan Van Sertima, and in his books, you know, he spent a lot of time in the beginning of the books asking questions about what didn't get answered or what could be answered. And I always felt like that's the power of a good scholar, because they're answering questions, but they're also giving questions for the next generation. Like what we need you guys to go answer, you know, what we need you guys to pick up this baton, you know, and that's the nature of how we were taught, you know, so that's the power in it, you know. We don't deal with a mystery God, but we deal with like the babies is going to do it, you know. Every time I be with the older, because my enlightened knowledge of me, he returned to the essence is here too, remembered in perfection. He used to always say that. He said the babies will figure it out. You know, he used to always say that, you know, and it was a thing where like we weren't just throwing up our hands though, but we were like, listen, if we leave the questions so worded, so good, right? Because there are things that we can't answer because we never came with the question. We have no idea that what we don't know exists to even think about. So if we spend our life to also putting questions into good words, we leave the next generation with lots of things to study and find out and answer, you know. And that's what we're here for, you know. That's the connection that we have, you know. And that's what we don't look up, we look beyond, you know, to the babies, you know.
Indeed, God. Indeed, God.
It's a school of philosophy. That's what it sounds like. Complete philosophy is to question everything in existence.
Absolutely.
Going to the root. So every time you get an answer, you get another question. Why did that question go about?
Yeah, let me tell you something. When I learned what knowledge means, man, he never was like, good answer. Man, he never gave me a kudos. He always was like, okay, well then, and I'd always go home with another question. You know, I never was fully, I was like, okay, that's good, but I always went home with homework. You know, I always had some homework, you know.
Yeah, I get to the nucleus of it, man. You gotta get to
right. And you know, we were talking off air about how I view the schools of thought. I like this idea of man being God. If it was true, we couldn't have been the ones to come up with that first, and we have it. And there are so many other ancient schools of thoughts that say the same thing, and they all, at their root, are philosophies, because they're about man constantly creating his reality. And then realizing that I am the creator because I keep creating my reality. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And so it becomes a philosophy because every next man can also create a world anew. And that's something I won't know about. You know what I mean? That's something I won't know about. So there's a mix of unknown and known makes the universe beautiful, you know?
Oh, indeed, for sure, God. Now, as far as to go take it back to the teachings. Now, the way we do supreme mathematics, all right, the way we do supreme mathematics, like for instance, today's math is knowledge, power, refinement, all being born in equality. Some people say, I think gods from Medina like to just leave refinement out. That's a whole
Right.
nother discussion.
That's a whole lot.
So knowledge, power, refinement, all being born to equality, or some gods say knowledge, power, born equality, right? Just to cover all bases, right? So the way we do supreme mathematics, can you explain that and why we
Right, right.
do mathematics that way?
Yeah. You know, when we take every day's date and we born them, borning the numbers, adding the numbers until one solid number is left, right? That was done. That's not just something that we do, but in ancient numerological systems, they call it the phatic system, where you keep adding the numbers, a number up to a single digit. When we do this exercise, it's like the ultimate exercise that we do, like the most famous one that we do. And it's basically about focusing on a particular principle within the supreme mathematics and realizing that if we are writing our history in advance, like we're guiding our reality, then one of the greatest exercises to see that the calendar that everyone is using, that we're all subject to, is something to also see that it has a pattern that continues and repeats 12 times a year. So by doing this, so we kind of master understanding the principles on a deeper level day by day and seeing how we grow with them. So it doesn't mean that when it's today's the 15th and we say knowledge, power, all being born to equality, that we're saying that, okay, that means that everything is about knowledge, power today. So wisdom 2, understanding 3, we're not going to deal with anything else but those numbers. It doesn't mean that. It means that we take a particular moment to focus on those numbers and see how powerful those principles link up. You know, because one of the main exercises I have students do when they're learning supreme mathematics is understand that with supreme mathematics is how you're going to define your principles. So think about situations, you know, just like we do with the martial arts, right? We're always thinking of situations. That's all we're doing, right? That's when we practice this, we're doing a million situations. And in what type of situations, how would you react to this? You know? So like, for example, I give an example of myself. Like, I'm a writer. So I've been at magazines where there was one magazine, very famous magazine. I won't say it now, but they asked me to publish an article that would be very, against someone that they didn't like anymore, they weren't working with. And I didn't get to do the research on that, but they wanted me to just publish it and, sign it as my name on it as the byline. And they were kind of offering me extra things for that, and I already had knowledge of self for years. So I all I thought was like, man, that's wisdom knowledge. You know what I mean? They want me to put my name on something, right? But I didn't do the knowledge of if this was true, if what they said was true, what are the sources, none of that stuff. So my principles are in line with supreme mathematics. And in this case, they're also aligned, excuse me, with my journalistic ethos. Can't publish things I can't, I don't have the source or anything. And the answer was that they gave me was, just trust me, and then degrees pop in my head. I can hardly believe that unless I was made blind, deaf, and dumb. I can't just, you said that. And mind you, he wasn't an original man either. So I'm like, nah, we not doing that.
Yeah. I think I got an idea. I ain't gonna go there, but I got an idea.
Yeah. But so I said, I can't do that. And that goes against, everything I'm about. But when people think about what they would do in situations, they usually think of responses that, especially young kids, they always tell me, well, I'm a real, and I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. But they give me a response that they think is cool.
Yeah.
They think is cool and would be about what they're about. But I'm saying, listen, it's about doing what you ought to do and what is the right thing and what it says about you. And you've got to go through supreme mathematics. Now, when we focus and do this exercise, like knowledge, power, all being born in equality, we think about, well, if knowledge is an actual truth, an actual fact that is proven, not a statistic that could be manipulated, and power is something that we exert a propulsive influence, you could say, that if I have that knowledge and I put it into a propulsive influence, right, then that means I'm actually pushing myself. Knowledge can be pushing myself into a different position, a position of equality, a completely different position than I was in.
And I would like to add, now power is a propulsion, right?
Right.
Right. I think that propulsion needs refinement.
Right. Yo, I definitely don't. I definitely use refinement, you know, and but I'm just building with the part to keep it as simple as possible. You know what I mean? But we go through these principles to then see how we would be in real life. You know what I mean? And that never ends. So the assignment can't end. Focusing on these principles, and then what happens is you start doing it every day. The months go by, and you're repeating this again and again. You start adding more insights to the same degrees again and again, and now you have your own understanding of how you will be in situations. And when someone says that man is very upright, that female is very upright and upstanding, it's because they have a consistency of principle that isn't affected by the outside forces. You know, it's the same thing we say like with the martial arts, right? You can't fight everybody to make sure you could beat everybody, right? So even the greatest fighter of all time literally can't go around the planet Earth and fight everybody just to make sure. You know what I mean?
Right.
So the only thing he can know at his best ability is to know himself so well that he could know how he will adapt to as many different types of beings that he could encounter. You know, and that's what we do with the supreme math. You know, and you know, as a side note, refinement gets knocked by brothers from Medina. And I'm not saying historically, but as far as philosophically, we're not going to go historically and go through all that again. But philosophically, because they say that refinement is the same definition as culture, and culture already was four, right? And when you look it up in a dictionary, refinement means a culturing. Yes, they are correct. However, I have never defined refinement as culturing. You know, just like English is, I love English. I'm a writer, and that's what makes it so much fun. It means many things. And refinement also means a focus of things. And for me, our power is always focused. And I give the best example of the Father. He never was in a pulpit. He never yelled to a million people, the black man is God. All of you come through, you know, and hear this. He always taught and focused his power of his truth to individuals, you know, to individuals. And at the time when he was alive, he had more students than all of these other movements that were around him by hundreds. So his way of teaching was so much more powerful, but it was refined. And I liken it to a laser, light that is refined into a laser, you know? So power always has refinement because it's always focused. When you live out your culture, that's your understanding, and you always know where you intended to go, you know?
Indeed.
This is where like I would have arguments or discrepancies with artists that have knowledge of self. And they said, you know, I just say whatever on a song. So if I say something about bitches or I say something like this, and I could say whatever, it's a song. But it means that your power doesn't have refinement. It means it doesn't have focus to say exactly what you mean and what you actually are. You're just going with the flow. You know what I mean? Now that works for a lot of guys, even in our nation. You know, it is what it is. But I'm saying that I disagree with that. You know what I mean? And our power always has some type of focus with it, you know? And that's why refinement, I see refinement being in the mathematics, you know? And I just want to throw that side note, you know what I mean?
Gotcha.
Because it's, I think it's useful, you know?
Indeed.
But these mathematics and how we see it is the ultimate exercise, you know? It never gets old, you know? And it's always useful, you know? I think we should never stop doing it, though. You know, most people stop doing it when they get knowledge, and they only do it to inspect someone else. But they should be doing it with themselves every single day. Every single day. You know, that's our push-ups, Scott. That's our push-ups. You know what I mean? That really is. You know, that's the jump shots in the gym. You know.
Now, taking it to the supreme alphabets. Now, after you build on the mathematics, how do you build on the supreme alphabets?
Right, right. You know, for students, I tell them that supreme alphabet is really an articulation, a detailing of principles in supreme mathematics, right? That also allow us to have more of a dialect, you know, because between quoting 120 lessons and that body of information, you know, for people that never seen it, it probably is about 14 pages long. So it's a good body of knowledge, you know, a body of information. And supreme alphabet, a meaning, a word or two or three for each letter, also aligned with the number. So the mathematics, the supreme mathematics, has a meaning that goes with them too, that links up with them, so they correlate. That's the word.
Can you give us an example of?
Right. So they correlate, right? So they don't. When I say that they correlate, it means they don't mean the same things, but they connect. So if we just go with the first letter, Allah, one, Allah, one is knowledge, right? So if you look at knowledge, knowledge is infinite. Knowledge is the foundation of of all things. Allah is that as well. So they correlate. Knowledge is not the exact definition of Allah. By far, it's not. You know what I mean? That would almost make Allah mysterious, though. You know, Allah is just knowledge. You know, that would be mysterious as well. We'd be looking for mystery too there, right? But it correlates, though, because just as knowledge is a foundation, so is Allah himself. You know, the original man, the original Asiatic black man. So that's the correlation that we look for, you know. And then they could get more profound. They could extend the dialect of ideas, right? They hold ideas, the supreme alphabet, that are major. Not the 17th letter is queen, right? Mm-hmm. The 17th letter is queen. So you go one who knowledges God, right? Mm-hmm. And so these are things that make statements, ideas, and they just extend the dialect in the insight that we come with, you know.
Indeed. So how would you? So today's math is we already said it, right? Knowledge, power, born, equality. How would you see today's alphabet, supreme alphabet?
In the alphabet, the 15th letter is O, right? Mm-hmm. And O for us is cipher, you know, and a lot of times, though, in many respects, though, when I was saying, if you look at what I was saying before about knowledge power, that it brings an equality up. I like to call equality the proper position that someone is in once they live out their culture powerfully. They put themselves in the proper position. And for me, that is almost like a new cipher, but it's a cipher in the mind. You know what I mean? And so that's how I've always linked it to the alphabet, you know, a certain cipher of the mind that a person is in when they reach that equality, you know, because everything that we do profoundly that goes to supreme mathematics reaches equality. And for me, I see that as a cipher of proper position, you know, so that's how I link it up.
Got you. So, and then after that, right? So let's say if we were in a build and we're in a cipher.
Yes.
And so we just went through math. We went through the supreme alphabets. Now we're taking it to the 1 to 10. And you would do pretty much the same thing you did with the mathematics 1, 5, and then 6 within the supreme, within the 1 to 10.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So you would look at all the sets within 120 lessons, right? They're all number ordered. And the way we learn it is that they all mean something. They all have some correspondence to why they're numbered that way, you know. And you could do it simple, but certain elders that have done them extremely profound and extremely detailed. Whether it's Dumar Wadi used to have like incredible writings. He called national statements, and they were basically these plus lessons that he wrote. Really engaged teachings that he wrote of his understanding. based on lessons, and he would link up the degrees in these kind of ways, as far as like what knowledge power means, and go through the knowledge degree in the 1 to 10, or go to the next set knowledge degree in the 1 to 36, and link them up and born them, you know, to what they would be like. What would the 6th degree mean here and there, you know? And so when we get the lessons, especially when you first learn them, you're trying to see what are the 6 degrees in all of the sets, what are the 5th degrees, you know, you want to see the linkage in all of them. And you don't want to get lost in trying to make things fit, but you want to see how things are put together as well, you know. And I think that when we're younger, when we have the 120 in the younger years, man, we do a lot of mixing and matching. Like we mess with them a lot, you know what I mean?
How important is from what I learned, is like the mathematical buildup?
Yeah, you know, mathematical buildup was something that, like, at its most complex, was something that Wise Jamel used to teach. Remembered in Perfection, the Wise Jamel. And he used to teach that. He used to teach Wednesdays. So I was teaching Thursdays. He was teaching Wednesdays when he was alive. And he basically would born each letter in the degree. So knowledge, he would born the K is the 11th letter, and is the 14th. He would do every single letter and then add them up and born them to a single digit. And then he would come with meanings of why that is so. So knowledge is, now I don't know them because I never agreed with that. You know, I love what he was doing and the insights that came from it, but I never agreed with it because the English language is something that I don't know why. I don't bear witness to each word being constructed. As you know, a lot of it, they're built up over time. So I don't bear witness to them having such a distinct meaning. You know, so like, let's say knowledge, you know, it has silent letters. It is not written the way that it sounds. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So these are things that I mean, though, you know, and I didn't construct that. So I'm born what my name means, you know, because I constructed it myself. I constructed my own name. You know what I mean?
I want to I gotta ask this question, man. This is off the cuff, right? Like, I mean, this is like sidebar. What Sunez Allah, right? You're the only person I know with the name Sunez Allah. Yeah. I decided that I want my name to be now Brown Allah. What's up?
You know, that's how when I got the knowledge, right? I'm from Sunset Park, Brooklyn, so that's a Puerto Rican neighborhood. They didn't have nobody with the knowledge there, you know. Yeah. When I was young, God bodies were the other gangs and stuff. You know what I mean? We had Latin Kings, Nieta, Familia, so they were just a different gang that isn't there. You know what I mean? And so I didn't really know anything. But when I was in college, as a hip hop writer, journalist, though, I met my A-alike as a writer journalist was Day Sun. Right. So he's the one that eventually brought me to the school. And Day Sun's name is Day Sun, the Sun, right? D-A-S-U-N. And he said he was really, if you know Day Sun, you know Day Sun. He's very eccentric, you know what I mean? And different, you know what I mean? So he was like, you got to build, they'll bomb you. And mind you, I don't know what happens. I've never been there, you know, like, so I had learned math alphabet 1 to 10 and was on the 1 to 36 before I even went to the school because I thought they would bomb me if I didn't know anything. I wasn't even sure if they thought Puerto Ricans were original people. Like I wasn't sure. And so I had to make a name too. So I figured I have to make a name. So I would talk to him about it. His name is Day Sun. I'm from Sunset Park. There's a lot of sun in the name. So Sun is on all the names. So I kept thinking of Sun, but I'm thinking like, man, if I go there, I might be the only Puerto Rican because I'm listening to all these rappers like Wu-Tang, all of them. I don't see any Puerto Ricans. You know what I mean? Maybe, you know, who I met later, Don Pacino. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's one out of like a million that I'm listening to. So I was like, I'm going to put the Sun in the name, but I'm going to make it so that they know where I'm coming from. And so I gave it like a Spanish sound. I wrote it with an Enya sound. You know?
I thought that was like your last name or something like that.
Right? No, it's not. It's not. You know, and people that try to like, if I get trolls on the internet, you know what I mean? They'll try to say, "Oh, look, he just used his last name, and Puerto Ricans are not original and shit like that." They think it's my last name. If you see, like on Facebook, I'll have Edward Sunez Rodriguez, my honorable name with my righteous name in the middle. That came about. That's way before even Facebook. That came about because when I was at the Source magazine, they wouldn't pay you if you didn't have your honorable name in the byline. So I was like, nah, I'm Sunez. I've been Sunez for years. Like, how are you gonna? But then we had to do it like that. So that's why I put the Facebook like that, because I didn't want Facebook to not give me the account or whatever like that back in, like, what was it, 2012 or something. But so I made the name Sunez, and I made it as an acronym. So it literally means Savior of the Universe now shows and proves the equality of knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. 6 equals 1 plus 2 plus 3, or 1 times 2 times 3. So equality of zigzag zig is equality of knowledge, wisdom, understanding. So in a more simpler way, Sun is Allah. Sunez, Sunez. You know, so that's how I came with the name. You know.
Now I've known.
Hold on, Ron. I was asking a question real quick.
All right.
Sure.
When you say bombing, what do you mean by getting bombed?
Well, when I was told that by Dayson, I didn't know what he meant either.
Yeah.
But it sounded dangerous. You know what I mean? It sounded dangerous. But in the 70s, when it was rougher in the 80s, bombing meant someone was getting beat up because they said they knew something and they didn't. All right. So obviously people would make mistakes and they might hit somebody or something like that if they didn't know something and they just never knew. That would be wrong. But the whole idea of bombing, though, became that at its most extreme, but also just yelling at someone and scolding them vehemently because they're not right and exact. You know what I mean?
Does that make sense though? Like if you're trying to enlighten somebody, you see how a
course.
parent will do a child.
Like that's the whole thing. Like we learned this in the Western world, so this was taught and shared the way everything in the Western world is by brute force sometimes.
Exactly.
So a lot of gods, like they're in their projects and they say, "Listen, I got this knowledge. Nobody's coming out their doors though. Any young is not coming out their doors unless they know mathematics." You know, and it was like that. You know, and they had to know. But, you know, in this day and time, that's emphatically now cipher. Like, we don't do that. You know what I'm saying?
Right. You know what, though, God? I kind of came up like that. So, like, that's, like, embedded in my personality, and I can't get it out.
Right.
It's like, yo, I kind of really...
There are people that you know, like, there are people that all kinds. Like, there are people that, let's say if you find people that are doing devilishment with the teachings and things like that, you know, I'm not going to say that. I'm not putting out there, but like they have to be dealt with certain ways. You know what I'm saying? But if a student, like when I have students though, and they say that they know something and they don't, I have to bomb them. I have to scold them. I have to tell them that, listen, this is not right and exact, and you're only putting yourself in more trouble, not just with us with this, but this habit that you're developing. Right? Because if you have the nerve to lie to us, imagine what you'll do outside. You know what I mean? And that's not what we teach. You know what I mean? No one is good at, no one is worthy of us being other than ourselves outside. You know what I'm saying? Indeed. So, you know, when we teach like that, we have to bomb them and stuff like that. You know, we want people to be like, I don't know anything. And everything that you don't know is fine. Like if I have students and they don't know a damn thing and somebody else thinks like, wow, you don't know that? I'm like, yo, it's okay that they don't know that. You know? Well,
but if I'm telling you over and over and over the same thing, and we keep going over the same thing.
Right. Yeah. And
then you still don't want to get it.
Right. Yeah. You know, then, you know, and a lot of times though, like, look, one of the reasons I've been able to teach this so many years is that I don't do that kind of bombing. If someone's not right and exact, I just tell them calmly, I'm like, you're not going to make it here. You're not doing right. If they're older, then I don't even exert energy. I'm like, listen, you're a grown man failing right here. You got to step up and don't come back. And I keep it calm because I'm not exerting and stressing myself for people that should be grown enough to study. You know what I'm saying? I put more energy if they're young, you know, like I'll put like a whole exuberant, melodramatic thing if they're young, you know, because they need that. And they don't usually get that in their home. Like, they're not told how important it is to learn something, how to do something right and exact. You know what I mean? Like, no, you can't just read this book. You got to read the whole thing. You got to learn to finish something, you know? Or like we tell them a workout and they do like, I did some push-ups. This was what we said we was going to do. You got to do the whole thing. I don't care if you can't even, you're doing it horrible. You got to do the whole thing. Like, you get people to finish things. You get people to be honest about where they're at. You know what I mean? And the best thing that, you came here to voluntarily learn this stuff. So if you lie about where you're at, you're only hurting yourself.
I don't want to backtrack too much, but you mentioned something with supreme mathematics as being in the science of numerology, right?
Sure.
Isn't it likened to the axiom of gematria to a certain sense?
In certain respects, all spiritual exercises done with numbers is going to link up and seem similar. You know what I mean? I think that what makes us different is that we are constantly trying to take out the mysteriousness out of things.
Exactly.
So because you could get mysterious. Like, I'll give you an example. One of the things I say is that I do not accept builds that deal with coincidence. Like when somebody builds to me, like when they tell me like 7 means God, and they go, the pyramids are 7-step pyramid, and they name me many things that are wonderful that are in 7s. I said, you just gave me great coincidences. You didn't give me a proof that 7 is God. You know what I'm saying? Gotcha. So coincidences is something that, especially with mathematics, you can get mysterious with. And on an even deeper level, anything that becomes a tradition that you do regularly, including us, can be mysterious though, because you start to accept that it's true and not prove that it's true. You know? And then it becomes a belief though. And that's what happens though. A lot of people have this knowledge a long time. They're like, hey, I'm not trying to hear what anybody says. This is true. And I'm not trying to deal with you young and asking me questions that I can't really answer and stuff, But that's what we do, Like, it doesn't happen to me. I'm telling you why it doesn't happen. Like where somebody will stump me with a question, because I already teach under a format where I don't have all the answers. I don't have all the answers. My goal is to help you find the answers to stuff. So if somebody asks me something and said, listen, I haven't studied that, but this is where you can go to study that. You know what I mean? Let's go research and get some books about that.
Yeah, be scientists.
Yeah.
You guys are the scientists. That's what it is. It's from because I used to go to the school before in Mecca. I met up with C1 a lot, a brother who had like some kind of car accident or something like that. And we used to be in there talking. And Al Jamal, the elder, I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Infinite Al Jamar, yeah. He passed away too. Great elder.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, one of the greats.
Yeah. So we used to be in there. I used to be asking all kinds of questions like that,
Absolutely, yeah.
Sometimes you get caught up in those numbers, man. You turn to Leonardo and you just lose your mind. Yeah.
That's why like when they're young with the 120, I want them to mix and match it. I want them to mess around with it, they'll play with it and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Yeah. But in the classroom, that's where the laboratory is. They're supposed to experiment and say something that is way off the wall. And I've heard some off the wall questions, off the wall builds that really get shot down because they're missing certain parts. But this is how the student learns. You know what I mean? It's like I said, a lot of these teachers are a lot like martial arts though. You know what I mean? Like, we watch movies, right? And we go to Seagung Bobby and we'd be like, Bobby, check this out. Look how he did this though. We do it all messed up, get beat up. And then he would say, listen, you did it wrong. No, this is how you do it though. But if we didn't bring that to the classroom, sometimes he may not have taught us that. You know what I mean? So, it's important.
So peace, God. This is the sister Divine Karma. Sorry. Divine Karma.
What up, Karma?
Peace.